Hello and welcome to Lost Love Chronicles.
Dear listeners, before we get started, drop a quick hi in the comments and let us know where you're tuning in from. Also, if you have any suggestions for us to make the channel better, please let us know. Now let's start with the story. She thought she married a doormat, and I let her believe it. It was easier that way, watching her play the part of a woman unfulfilled, a little too eager to rehearse her lies, a little too confident I'd never push back. That belief became her trap. What started as infidelity ended up becoming the perfect setup for her own destruction. And through it all, I never raised my voice. Not once. The morning it began, nothing looked suspicious. At least not to anyone who didn't know Veronica Drake the way I did. She walked through the front door with her usual swagger, ponytail damp, clothes clinging to her skin, that navy blue sports bra and yoga pants set she knew showed just enough. She was humming under her breath like she'd just finished a soul-cleansing workout. But something about it, her walk, too deliberate, too choreographed, made me freeze mid-sip, coffee halfway to my lips. She leaned over and kissed my cheek like she always did. Like routine. "Morning," she said, tossing her gym bag carelessly toward the hallway. It landed with a soft thud on the hardwood. "How was your workout?" I asked, eyes still locked on the financial report in front of me. She pulled a bottle of water from the fridge. "Amazing," she replied too quickly. "Jackson showed me this new burn routine. Legs are going to hate me tomorrow." Jackson. That name again. Casual, like it wasn't the 12th time I'd heard her say it just this week. But it wasn't the repetition that hit me. It was the way she said it, soft and bright like sunlight warming a familiar memory. The kind of tone she used to save for me. Back when we were new. Back when I still meant something. I should have said something right then. I should have looked her in the eye and said, "You're glowing, and I know it's not from deadlifts." But I didn't. Instead, I closed my laptop slowly and nodded. "Glad it was worth it," I said flatly. She didn't even notice the weight in my voice. She turned away, already unlocking her phone, thumbs dancing across the screen, texting someone who definitely wasn't me. Half present, half gone. That night, she stayed late at work again. And just like that, the pattern began. It wasn't her lies that gave her away. It was her scent. She would come home trailing cologne that wasn't mine. Not anything I'd ever worn. There were faint traces of aftershave too. Cheap, generic. Something I knew she never bought me. Her excuses? Paper thin. The gym ran late. Office emergency. Wine night with the girls. I didn't argue. I didn't question. I played my part. Because I needed time. By week 2, I had a name, Jackson A. Collins. It came from a quick scroll through her gym's social media. Personal trainer. Former college athlete. Divorced. 2 kids he never saw. I created a burner account that night. Hired a PI named Camille Diaz out of Vegas. She came highly recommended. Sharp. Discreet. Ruthless when needed. By week 3, I had enough footage to make my stomach turn. Jackson and Veronica laughing over wine at a steakhouse, her hand resting on his thigh like it belonged there. Jackson's beat-up Dodge Ram parked in our driveway at 11:32 a.m. on a Wednesday. The same Wednesday she told me she was in Tempe visiting her sister. And then came the final image. The one that broke something inside me forever. Our bedroom. Our sheets. Our pillows. Her, on top of him, smiling like she'd just found salvation. The footage wasn't grainy or distorted. It was clear, too clear. Her hands on his chest. His fingers gripping her hips. Her laughter like I hadn't heard in years, unfiltered and alive. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even cry. But I could plan. That night, I cooked her favorite. Creamy truffle Alfredo, fresh garlic bread, Pinot Noir, chilled precisely to 54 degrees. I laid the table like it was date night. Candles. Soft jazz. She walked in humming, same tune as always. She kissed my cheek and looked down at the plate like I was some kind of miracle. "You're too good to me," she said with a light laugh, sitting down. I smiled and raised my glass. "To us." She clinked her glass to mine. I watched her take that first bite with the same mouth that had whispered into another man's ear just hours earlier. Later that evening, while she showered, I installed 3 audiobugs. One in her purse, tucked deep inside the lining under a loose seam. One under the bed frame, right near the leg where the mattress squeaked just enough. And one inside the bathroom, under the vent, where she always FaceTimed her sister or whoever she claimed was on the other end. If she was going to build her betrayal inside my house, I was going to design my revenge inside her silence. By the next day, I had a folder on my desktop titled Operation Thorn. The audio started rolling in by night 2. At first, it was harmless chatter, her scrolling through Instagram, voice notes to her friends, the occasional call to her mother. Then came the giggles, the careless whispers. Moments where she sounded like a version of herself I hadn't known in years. It didn't hurt like I expected. It was worse. Colder. Like watching someone you love disintegrate in front of you. Pixel by pixel, laugh by laugh. Something died in me every time I heard her breathe his name. Then came the recording, the one I've played over a dozen times. She was in the bathroom. She didn't know the vent carried sound that well. Her voice, low, hushed, mischievous. I think he suspects something. Jackson's gravelly voice, casual and dumb as ever. He's a finance guy, right? He's too busy crunching numbers to pay attention to you. I paused the recording. Finance guy? That's what she told him I was. Not a cyber forensics consultant. Not someone trained in pattern recognition, digital surveillance, metadata analysis. Not someone who could reverse engineer entire timelines from the blank space between two texts or the sudden silence in a WhatsApp backup. Jackson thought I was just some spreadsheet drone. And that's where he made his first mistake. By week 5, I knew more about Jackson Collins than his ex-wife probably did. He had a gambling problem, undisclosed. 2 failed LLCs out of Nevada. Missed child support payments for 18 consecutive months. His fitness business. A thin front for unlicensed testosterone and HGH sales. I printed everything, every filing, fine, and charge, and sealed it inside a fireproof folder labeled collateral. But the worst part wasn't Jackson. It wasn't even the cheating anymore. It was that Veronica was no longer just being unfaithful. She was planning an exit. I talked to my cousin Jessica, Veronica said in another clip, her voice barely audible. I was listening to the audio in my office, late at night, headphones tight over my ears. The tone she used, conspiratorial, confident, wasn't the voice of someone uncertain. It was the voice of someone plotting. She knows this divorce attorney in Scottsdale, she continued. Says we could go after spousal support. Says if I play my cards right and act like I've been emotionally neglected, I could walk away with the house. The house. Then Jackson's voice, thick with smug amusement, and maybe more. He's got stocks, investments, hell, maybe even some of that crypto crap. I sat back in my chair, jaw clenched. Crypto crap? I almost laughed. They thought they were so clever. But what hit me the hardest wasn't their condescension. It was what she said about the house. The house she wanted to gut and flip. The one I rebuilt from the studs up after my father died. That was mine. My hands were on every inch of that foundation. My memories lived in that timber and stone. My savings. My equity. My future. This wasn't infidelity anymore. This was theft. Smiling, seductive theft. So I pivoted. My strategy shifted from surveillance to preparation. I started writing quiet emails to top-tier divorce attorneys. I redrafted financial documents. I moved essential assets, everything she didn't even know existed, into secure, irrevocable trusts under an LLC she'd never trace. And most importantly, I revisited our prenuptial agreement. Veronica never liked the legal side of things. She insisted on adding her own clauses back then, probably thinking they were cute little power moves. One of them, I remembered well, the cohabitation and fidelity clause. Turns out her vanity became my shield. Clause 7A. If either party is found engaging in an extramarital affair with documented evidence, the prenuptial agreement is rendered null and void in court. Clause 9C. In cases of fraud, misrepresentation, or deceitful behavior with financial motivations, the offending party forfeits entitlement to all shared assets. She didn't read the fine print 6 years ago, but I did. Every clause, every caveat. And now I had what I needed. Revenge wasn't going to be loud. It was going to be surgical. October arrived like it didn't know it was supposed to die. The sun still smiled. The wind was still warm, but you could feel it. Just under the surface, the cold creeping in. Veronica began disappearing more frequently. Yoga retreats, she claimed. She came back glowing, drenched in some exotic oil blend she never used around me. Her phone clutched like a diary under her pillow at night. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Every new lie she whispered was just another piece I moved on the board. I was playing chess. She didn't even realize she was in the game. But I knew one thing. The trap couldn't stay theoretical forever. I needed a trigger. I needed witnesses. So I orchestrated it. A simple message from an anonymous burner account sent to Jackson Collins. Veronica's husband is on to you. You're being watched. Act now or lose everything. I watched the notification land. Tracked his IP. Saw him open it. He didn't reply. But 2 hours later, Veronica came home early. She slammed the front door so hard it rattled the hinges. Her heels clicked fast down the hallway before she burst into the kitchen. Flushed. Wide-eyed. Angry. Did you go through my phone? She snapped. I didn't even flinch. My hands kept moving, steady and slow. No, I answered calmly, slicing a cucumber on the cutting board. What? She asked, her eyes locked onto mine, scanning, hunting, for any sign of guilt, a twitch, a shift, anything that might expose a lie. But she found nothing. Because I hadn't lied. I didn't need her phone. I had the cloud. Every photo, every message, every location ping, Synced, backed up, timestamped. It was all there, more honest than she'd ever been. That weekend, I invited my old friend Mason King over for drinks. Veronica always liked Mason, trusted him, said he talked too much and drank too little, but always had something clever to say. To her, he was just a chatty attorney I knew from college. She had no idea he was already drafting my divorce case. We sat out on the patio. The air was mild, the kind of evening that pretends nothing's broken. Veronica sipped from her glass of Merlot, her feet tucked under her, pretending she cared about the breeze. Mason made small talk, played his part perfectly. So, he said, swirling his whiskey. How's married life? Great, she replied quickly, flashing a smile so rehearsed it could have belonged to a mannequin. He's busy with work. I do my thing. We make it work. I watched her lie so easily it made my skin itch. Mason grinned, voice warm and casual. That's the secret to longevity, huh? Separate lives under one roof. I nearly laughed. He wasn't wrong. Later that night, after Veronica went to bed, Mason stayed behind for exactly 15 minutes. Long enough to confirm everything. You've got a rock-solid case, he said, flipping through the printed records and audio logs I handed him. Prenup's airtight. She's sunk. And with this kind of evidence, you won't just win, you'll bury her. I nodded slowly. I felt nothing. No joy. No rage. Just a kind of quiet, mechanical purpose. The next morning, Veronica left for what she claimed was a weekend trip to Sedona with her college girlfriends. She even hugged me at the door, lips brushing my cheek, said she'd bring back lavender oil and pictures from the trails. 3 hours later, a charge pinged on our joint credit card. Hotel room, key card purchase. Not Sedona. Not even close. A boutique hotel in downtown Phoenix. Room 410. Registered to Jackson Collins. The last puzzle piece. I printed everything. Receipts, timestamps, camera stills. I layered text screenshots over audio transcripts like forensic overlays. By nightfall, I had built a timeline that could survive any cross-examination. I sealed 5 identical manila envelopes. One to my attorney. One to the divorce lawyer Veronica had been planning to hire. Yes, I knew. One to Jackson's ex-wife. One to his parole officer. And one for me. Monday morning arrived like Judgment Day. I walked into our house with the envelope in hand and fire in my spine. Veronica was in the kitchen pretending to read a cookbook, something trendy with a pastel cover, untouched for months. She didn't look up right away. Veronica, I said, my voice smooth as stone. We need to talk. She glanced up, clearly annoyed. Now's not a good time, Preston. Can it wait? Maybe we do brunch instead. I stepped forward and dropped the envelope onto the counter. It landed with a sound heavier than its weight. She blinked. Her eyes drifted to the photos on top, unblurred, undeniable. Jackson's tattooed hand around her waist. Her mouth open in a frozen moan, head thrown back, in our bed. The transcripts were stapled neatly behind the images, lines of betrayal printed in ink she couldn't erase. Her face went pale. Her hands trembled as she reached for the folder. What is this? Truth, I said quietly. The thing you stopped offering me a long time ago. I can explain, she started, voice cracking, panic bleeding through her lip gloss and mascara. No, I cut in. You can't. My voice was still calm. Deadly calm. Because for once, I don't need your explanation. I have facts. I have footage. I have recordings. I have bank transactions and geolocation history. I stared at her, steady and cold. You don't get to lie your way out of this one. You've been spying on me, she gasped, clutching the envelope like it burned. I didn't flinch. No, I replied calmly. I've been documenting the woman I married slowly turning into someone I don't recognize. She looked stunned, lips slightly parted, eyes darting between the photos and me like she couldn't decide which was more dangerous. I've been protecting myself from the storm you brought into this house. Her pupils dilated. Panic settled in. Her eyes were wide, frantic, an animal cornered, not quite ready to accept the cage was her own design. What are you going to do with all this? She asked, her voice low. I stepped closer, leaned in. My voice softened, not out of compassion, but with a finality sharp enough to cut through the last of her delusions. I'm going to give you exactly what you wanted, Veronica. She blinked rapidly, shaking her head slightly, as if trying to wake from a dream. Freedom, I said, but not the kind you dreamed of. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. Not the kind that comes with alimony and beachfront brunches. I watched her throat tighten. You're going to walk away with your name, your clothes, and not much else. She staggered back half a step, the folder still clutched in her hand. Her mouth tried again to form words. Preston, for the record. I continued, cutting her off. You could have just told me you were unhappy. You could have had the decency to say something. Her lips parted again, a weak protest beginning to form. But instead, you schemed. You plotted. You laughed behind my back with the same man who used to shove me into lockers in high school. Her eyes flinched at that. Finally, some recognition. Some shame. You knew him, she said quietly, almost too quietly. I did, I nodded. And now I know you too. She stood there, stunned, speechless. And for the first time in a long while, I walked out of the kitchen, out of her reach, out of the wreckage she'd created for herself. She didn't leave the house that day. Not for brunch. Not for errands. Not even for air. She just sat in the living room like a statue, back stiff, shoulders collapsed, the folder still resting on her lap. Occasionally, I'd catch her glancing at the door like she was waiting for Jackson to come barging in and rescue her. But Jackson wasn't coming. That morning, I'd sent him a matching envelope, photos, transcripts, credit card records, and a message that simply read, "You always like destroying lives. Let's see how you like it when someone fights back." That evening, I got a call. I didn't answer. Then came a string of desperate texts from Veronica. "Preston, we need to talk. Please, this isn't what it looks like. I'm scared." Scared. Good. By Thursday, her cousin Jessica messaged me. She asked if I'd been threatening Veronica. I sent back one line. "I'm not threatening her. I'm freeing her." Friday morning, her yoga instructor, Jackson, mysteriously closed his gym for 2 days. The reason? An anonymous tip sent to the City Board of Health. Attached were photos of illegal supplements, unlabeled vials, boxes of injectable HGH, stuffed into a back closet, improperly stored, no licenses. I didn't send the tip, but I know who did. Rachel Collins, Jackson's ex-wife. The woman he left behind with 2 kids and a mountain of debt. The woman I had coffee with just the week before. She cried for the first 10 minutes. Then she gave me everything I needed to bury Jackson Collins under his own lies. "I always knew he was a monster," Rachel said, her voice trembling, eyes rimmed red. "But I didn't know he'd find someone to help him sharpen his claws." I sat across from her in that quiet cafe, fingers wrapped around my untouched coffee. "Now you do," I replied. She nodded, a sharp breath escaping her lips. And together, we made a plan. The confrontation, the one Veronica and Jackson probably imagined, me sobbing, shouting, maybe even begging. Yeah, it happened. But not the way they pictured it. It was a Sunday afternoon. The kind where the light is too soft to trust. I made sure the cameras were rolling. Audio. Camille clear. Every angle captured. No ambiguity. No escape. Veronica arrived with Jackson in tow. She tried to look composed, tight-lipped, chin high, but her body gave her away. Shoulders stiff. Fingers twitching. That slight tremor in her voice when she said my name. "Jackson?" He smirked the whole time. That same smug, punchable grin he wore in high school when he shoved me into lockers and called me pencil boy. He looked around the living room like he owned it. Like this was already his territory. "You really think all this is going to matter in court?" He scoffed, hands stuffed in his pockets. "You're weak, Preston. You always were. She deserves better." I raised an eyebrow. "And that's you?" He stepped closer, puffing up like some high school jock stuck in a 40-year-old's body. "Yeah, me. I make her feel alive." I didn't flinch. Not even a blink. "Well, congratulations," I said quietly. "Because after today, you'll be feeling a whole lot of things." His smirk faltered. Court summons. IRS audits. Criminal investigations. Prison walls. That did it. The smirk vanished like fog under floodlights. Veronica turned sharply, looking between us. Her face drained of color. "What are you talking about?" I didn't answer her right away. Instead, I reached for the remote. One click. The screen behind me flickered to life. Surveillance footage played in silence. The boutique hotel, room 410. Then our bedroom. The kitchen. Parking lots. Every lie. Every touch. Every betrayal. Right there. In 4K on a 65-inch screen. Veronica's knees buckled. She dropped into the armchair behind her like the ground gave out. Her mouth opened, then closed. Breathless, Jackson clenched his fists, his eyes darting between me and the screen. "You're insane." "No," I said, turning to face him fully. "I'm prepared. I was watching you the entire time. You thought I was blind." I walked over and handed them each an envelope. Thick. Heavy. Jackson stared at his. Veronica didn't even reach for hers. "Inside," I said, "you'll find full transcripts, financial records, the prenup, police reports, medical records from Rachel's case, and photos of unlicensed steroid vials found in your gym." Jackson blinked hard. "I've already spoken to the authorities," I added. "They're reviewing everything. But today is your choice." "Choice," Veronica whispered, like the word had lost all meaning. "Leave," I said coldly. "Now. Or I press send, and this entire digital dossier gets mailed to every client, every partner, every agency you both have ties to." Jackson took a step toward me, puffed chest and clenched jaw. "You won't do it." I didn't speak. I just opened my hand and showed him my phone. My thumb hovered over the screen. One touch, I said, and it all goes live. Public. Viral. Irreversible. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Veronica did. She stood slowly, eyes glassy, shoulders slumped like defeat had already moved in. I didn't want this, she whispered. No, I said, voice firm. You wanted everything. And now, you'll have nothing. Jackson turned to her, his face twisted in disgust, lip curled. You told me you had this under control. I didn't think he'd, she stammered, her voice cracking like glass under pressure. You didn't think I'd stop being a doormat, I said, each word measured, calm. But I'm not that man anymore. Jackson didn't wait. He turned on his heel and stormed out, slamming the front door behind him so hard the frame rattled. Veronica didn't follow him. She stood frozen in the middle of the room, arms limp, lips parted, shaking like she couldn't decide whether to scream or collapse. Where am I supposed to go? She asked, her voice barely audible, like a child lost in the wrong story. I looked her dead in the eye. That's not my problem anymore. And then I turned away. The house exhaled. No more heels clacking across the hardwood. No more fake phone calls murmured behind bathroom doors. No more lies folded into the steam of the shower. Just stillness. Honest, unflinching stillness. It was the kind of silence you don't even recognize until you've been drowning in noise for years. And suddenly, you're breathing again. I didn't chase her. I didn't text a friend. I didn't pour myself a drink or gloat or rage or weep. Instead, I cleaned. I wiped down the counters, dusted shelves she hadn't touched in months, gathered her things one room at a time, her jewelry, makeup, that ridiculous Himalayan salt lamp she swore aligned the energy of the bedroom. I boxed it all. Every trace of Veronica Drake. Packed neatly, sealed tightly, and stacked by the door. The final box sat heavier than the rest. Inside, her wedding dress. Still wrapped in the same plastic, she brought it home in. Untouched since the day we said I do. Fitting, really. Because the woman who wore it never existed. She was just a beautiful mask hiding something poisonous underneath. By Monday morning, the divorce papers were filed. Mason moved fast, evidentiary urgency helped. Veronica was served at the dingy one-bedroom she'd found 2 blocks from a chain diner. According to the records I pulled, she'd just been hired there to wait tables. Her cousin Jessica tried calling again. I let it ring. 3 weeks later, the storm landed on Jackson Collins. Arrested. A full-scale federal raid, DEA, IRS, state police, hit his gym like a thunderclap. Footage of agents hauling out boxes and computers made the local news that evening. I didn't send the tip, but I know who did. Rachel Collins. She called me the next day. Her voice was shaky but strong. I cried when I saw him in handcuffs, she said. But not out of sadness, out of closure. I knew the feeling. The divorce didn't drag. Veronica's lawyer took one look at the files and immediately pushed for a settlement. There wasn't much left to argue. When she showed up for mediation, she looked smaller. Hollow cheeks. Hair scraped back in a careless bun. No makeup. She didn't look at me once. I'm sorry, she said quietly, hands trembling above the pen. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I needed to say it anyway. I'm not angry, I said. She blinked. Confused. You're not, she whispered. No, I said. I'm something worse. She stared, waiting. I'm indifferent. She bit her lip, nodded slowly, and signed. No alimony. No assets. Nothing. As she stood to leave, she hesitated at the door, turned halfway back. I hope one day you find someone better, she said, voice soft, almost human. I already have, I replied. She frowned. Who? I smiled just enough for her to see it. Me. 6 months later, I moved into a cabin on the edge of Bluewood Lake. 2 hours outside Phoenix, tucked between 40 acres of silence, towering pines, and a view so breathtaking it felt like an apology from the universe. The cybersecurity business I once ran out of a cluttered downtown apartment, thriving. But now, I pick my clients. Most of them were people like me, victims of betrayal, manipulation, deception. People who once trusted too much and paid for it. They started calling me the digital bloodhound. I just called it closure. One foggy morning, the kind where the mist hangs low like memory, I found a small parcel resting at the edge of my cabin's mailbox. No return address. No markings. Just my name, Preston, scrawled in familiar cursive across the front. Inside, a single sheet of paper, folded once, carefully. I sat down on the porch, mug of black coffee steaming in my hand, and opened it. The handwriting was unmistakable. Preston, I know you probably won't read this. Maybe you've burned it by now, but I need to say it anyway. I never deserved the love you gave me. I threw it away like it meant nothing because I was broken and I thought someone else could fix me, but he didn't. He destroyed what little I had left. I don't want forgiveness. I just want you to know I remember, every kindness, every time you chose patience over pride. Every moment I now realize was real. I hope you're happy. Truly. Because I'm still learning how to survive without hurting others. Veronica. I stared at it for a long time. Not in pain. Not in anger. Just still. I read it once. And then, without hesitation, I fed it to the fire. Watched the edges curl, blacken, crumble to ash. Not out of spite, but because I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was finally, beautifully free. That evening, I sat back on the porch, coffee warm in my palms. The sun dipped behind the towering pines, bleeding orange across the lake's glassy surface. The loons had started their evening chorus, low, haunting calls echoing across the water. My phone buzzed beside me. Monica, on my way. Should I bring red or white? I smiled. Monica, an old college friend, turned something more. We hadn't rushed it. No forced confessions. No let's talk about what happened. She knew. She just knew. She never asked for the broken parts. She liked who I was now. And that was more than enough. I typed back, surprise me. I'm done planning tonight. I just want peace. As I hit send, I looked out at the lake. The wind brushed softly through the trees, rippling the water, moving gently through the tall grass. The cabin creaked a little behind me, settling into itself, like I was. And in that moment, as the air cooled and the sky turned violet, I realized something I hadn't before. Peace was louder than revenge. Peace was revenge. And I had finally won, not by fighting back with fire, but by walking away with my soul intact. Now for the second story. She kissed another man, thinking she was walking into happiness. But I said nothing, made no scene, just walked away. Months later, her world would fall apart. And by the time she realized the cost, I wasn't just gone, I had already won. Let's start at the beginning. I'm not a man of chaos. My life is built on rhythm, on order. Alarm at 5:45 a.m. sharp. No snooze. Never snooze. Black coffee. 2 slices of toast, no butter. Quick stretches in the hallway while the coffee brews. Tool belt on. Truck engine rumbling to life by 6:20. Always 6:20. My work? It's not flashy. Electrical inspections. Mostly old homes, some new builds. Clean work. Honest. I like it. It keeps me sharp. It lets me sleep. That Thursday morning didn't feel any different. The job was on the north side of Richmond, familiar territory. A neighborhood full of porches and wide sidewalks, the kind where kids used to ride bikes and old men waved from rocking chairs. I'd been there plenty of times before. Dozens of homes just like this one. I parked the truck along the curb, grabbed my clipboard, and greeted the client with a firm nod and a half smile. Morning, he said. Let's get started, I replied, already scanning the entryway light fixture. I got to work. Circuits, outlets, breaker panels, crawl space wiring, all of it muscle memory. I was in a rhythm. I was just about done when I realized I'd left my multimeter in the truck. A rookie mistake. I chuckled to myself and shook my head. I stepped outside and walked down the driveway. And then I stopped. Across the street, someone was walking up a stone path. Brown curls pulled back in a messy bun. That red windbreaker I got her last Christmas. My chest tightened before my brain even caught up. It was Hannah, my wife. For a second, my mind scrambled. Maybe she was visiting a friend, dropping something off. Maybe. Then the front door opened. A man stood there. Tall. Fit. Too sure of himself. His body language screamed ownership. And then Hannah stepped into his arms. She kissed him. Slow. Deliberate. Like she'd done it 100 times. I stood frozen, halfway down the driveway, clipboard in one hand, the other clenched tight. It hit me all at once. The cold. The silence. The sharpness behind my eyes. My throat dried up. My mind went quiet. No rage. No shouting. Just the sound of my own breathing. I watched. And my hands curled into fists by my sides. But I made no sound. Then calmly, deliberately, I crossed the street and knocked on the scumsucker's door. I remember the sound of my knuckles hitting that wood. 3 solid knocks, sharp, final. It didn't feel real. My heart wasn't racing. My hands weren't shaking. I was cold, focused, the way I get before rewiring a live panel. He answered. Tall, gym body, smug face still half drunk on her kiss. His smile faltered the second he saw me. Confusion twisted his features. He didn't recognize me. Not yet. Bring her out, I said, voice low, flat. Or I come in. His pupils shrank. The blood drained from his face like someone had pulled a plug. He didn't say a word. A few seconds later, she stepped into the doorway behind him. Hannah, still wearing the red windbreaker. Her expression cracked like a dropped plate. Lucas, she breathed, like she hadn't just kissed someone else 5 minutes ago. Lucas, no? I cut her off. You made your choice, I said, calm as still water. You stay with it. She stepped forward, trembling. Her hand lifted toward me, as if I was something fragile, breakable, hers. But I stepped back. You don't get to touch me now. That was it. No screaming. No scene. I turned and walked away. Back to the truck. Back to the quiet. No drama. No begging. No violence. But inside me, something snapped. When I got home, I didn't slam the door. I didn't shout her name. I just walked through the house in silence. The kitchen smelled like her perfume, citrus and lavender. There was a cardigan draped over the back of the dining chair, one sleeve almost brushing the floor. Her favorite mug sat on the counter, half full of chamomile tea, the bag string still hanging over the edge. I looked at it all. Then I started packing. Not my things, hers. Every photograph. Every article of clothing. Every letter she wrote me. Birthday cards. Little notes left on mirrors. Doodles on grocery lists. All of it. I folded each piece with precision, the way I'd been trained to handle delicate wires. No rush. No fury. Just order. She had walked out of my life in slow motion, and now I was removing her from it the same way. By sunset, I was back outside Justin's house. Same truck. Same curb. Same silence. Box after box, I laid them down on the sidewalk. I didn't dump them. I didn't throw them. I placed them. Like tombstones. Neighbors peeked from behind blinds. I could feel their eyes, hear the rustle of curtains, the hush of whispered names. Hannah never came out. She was somewhere inside, hiding from what she'd built. I stood back when the last box touched concrete. The sun was setting, stretching long shadows across the pavement like cracks in glass. I didn't look back. I closed my truck door, drove off. No tears, no phone calls, no yelling into the steering wheel. But something inside me went cold. That night, the house felt hollow, but clean. For the first time in years, the silence didn't strangle me. It didn't cling to my ribs or claw at my thoughts. It just was. Still. Honest. I sat at the kitchen table, no lights on except the one above the sink. I listened to the hum of the refrigerator, the soft creak of settling wood. There was no scent of her shampoo trailing down the hall. No sound of her walking barefoot across the floorboards. And strangely, I didn't feel empty. I felt still. Somewhere across town, she was probably sitting on his couch. Justin. I had learned his name quickly, and I would forget it just as fast. Maybe they were eating. Or maybe he was talking, filling the space with some garbage like, well, he took that better than I expected. It sounds like something he'd say, too smug to feel the weight of anything. She wouldn't have laughed. She wouldn't have been able to. I saw it in her eyes when I said you made your choice. It wasn't rage I gave her. Not pleading. No drama. Just truth. And I knew that truth would rattle louder than anything I could have shouted. I didn't go to sleep right away that night. I walked the house. Not pacing. Just observing. The lotion she used still sat in the bathroom cabinet. Her toothbrush. A sock under the bed. Her favorite blanket was still draped over the couch, the one she always curled up in during movie nights. And for a second, just a second, I heard her laugh. Not really, of course. Just memory playing tricks. But I didn't flinch. The next morning, I got to work. No speeches. No crying. Just movement. I started in the bedroom, her side of the closet first. Every piece of clothing, every scarf, every necklace. Boxed neatly. No folding. No smell tests. No pausing to remember. Just gone. In the living room, I stood in front of our wedding photo for a full 10 seconds. Staring. Then I took it down. No hesitation. Anniversary cards, ripped. Old notes, shredded. I wiped my phone clean. Texts, photos, voicemails, even the shared calendar. Delete. 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 People say grief comes in waves. Not for me. I was the rock. And I refused to sink. When I met with my lawyer, she looked across the desk and asked the usual question. Do you want to state a reason for the divorce? I said only 4 words. Irreconcilable differences and deceit. That was it. No monologue. No accusations. I didn't want to spend a single second longer reliving it than I had to. I didn't want revenge. Not yet. I wanted distance. I wanted peace. And to get that, I had to cut her out completely. Not halfway. Not gently. Gone. No back doors left open. Meanwhile, Hannah was unraveling. At Justin's house, things weren't going the way she'd fantasized. I didn't need to be there to know it. I could picture it too easily. She probably clung to him at first like a woman lost at sea grabbing the nearest piece of driftwood, telling herself it was love, telling herself it was freedom, telling herself she hadn't just burned a life down to chase a spark. But that apartment of his, cramped, barely lit, the air stale from too many microwave dinners, and no soul, wasn't a home. Not like ours had been. She probably told herself it was a new beginning. That's what people like her do when consequences show up dressed like clarity. But I know that glow they were living in, that affair glow, it doesn't last under the light of honesty. It thrives in corners, in secrets, in shadows. Justin probably stopped charming her the second she became a constant, not a chase. You've been staring at your phone all week. I imagine him snapping. He's not going to text you. You cheated on him, remember? I can see her face, stunned like she'd been slapped. And maybe for once she didn't have a comeback. Maybe the truth finally broke through that fog of delusion. But I didn't know that yet. All I knew was silence. And I didn't break it. Her silence was loud, too. Not just hers. People around her, I heard, started pulling back. Friends, family, even her sister, who used to call every Friday, had gone quiet. At the hospital, I'm sure the air shifted around her. I know how people whisper without speaking. I know how judgment comes with glances instead of words. That's when the dreams probably started. Of me. Of our porch. Of my voice saying one word, leave. She was unraveling. Alone. Exactly where her choices had left her. But I stayed still. Then, one night my phone buzzed. A notification. I looked at it. Just the preview. Can we talk? Just once, please. It sat there on my screen, glowing against the dark. I didn't open it. I let it sit. I read it. Can we talk? Just once, please. I stared at the message for a while. My thumb hovered over the screen, then I locked my phone. No reply. I didn't need to. Instead, I opened my laptop, typed without thinking, and booked a cabin just outside Asheville. Secluded. Quiet. Trees thicker than excuses. No reception. No distractions. The idea of being unreachable wasn't just appealing. It felt like freedom. Real, clean freedom. Back home, I kept moving. Subtle changes at first. I rearranged the living room. Moved the couch away from the window she used to sit near. I painted the bedroom walls. Something neutral. Then I took it further. New bed, fresh linens. Crisp white. No traces of us. No ghosts in the stitching. Every night, I cooked for one. Pasta, stir-fry, steak. Nothing fancy. I didn't sit with sadness anymore. I sat with quiet. I worked longer hours. Took overtime. Stopped saying no to weekend jobs. After work, I hit the gym. Started lifting again. Running. My body hurt, but it was a good hurt. A rebuilding kind of ache. On the drives home, I rediscovered old playlists, songs I hadn't heard in years. Music I'd forgotten I loved. They didn't remind me of her. They reminded me of me. The version of me that existed before I gave everything to someone who dropped it. I wasn't trying to prove anything. Not to her. Not to the world. I was just healing. Quietly. Day by day. Meanwhile, I heard things. Justin. Hannah. Falling apart. Someone mentioned she'd had a breakdown in the kitchen. That she was crying, shattered glass and sobbing. That he just stood there cold. I didn't sign up for a breakdown, he apparently said. She snapped back, you were part of it. And he said, you let yourself get caught. That's who he really was. That's who she left me for. That night, she slept on the couch. The next morning, he was gone. No note. No goodbye. And this time, there was no one waiting for her. No husband. No home. No harbor. Just her. And the choices she made pressing down like a weight she couldn't shake. Then, one afternoon, I got the final paperwork from my attorney. Divorce finalized. Clean. Neat. Nothing left to sign. She looked at me from across the desk and asked gently, would you like to include any last statement for Hannah? I smiled. Just barely. I already said everything when I walked away. And I meant it. Because closure doesn't come from words. It comes from the moment you decide you're done begging someone to stay. It was about walking away and never looking back. I meant it the day I left her standing in that doorway with Justin behind her. No dramatics. No parting speech. Just a clean exit, like flipping the last switch in a house before shutting the door for good. I didn't know where she went after that, and I didn't care to. But I can guess. Somewhere smaller. Dimmer. Less certain. A place not built for comfort, but survival. That's what happens when you burn every bridge behind you. You don't get to choose the view. Me? I kept building. The days settled into rhythm. Mornings came earlier now. I'd wake before the alarm. No rush, just instinct. I started running 3 miles every day. No music. Just breath, heartbeat, and the sound of my shoes hitting pavement. I found peace in repetition. In sweat. In pushing forward. Work felt different too. Not just a job now. It was purpose. I wasn't just fixing wiring. I was rebuilding things. Broken things. Outlets. Switches. Lives, in a way. One afternoon, I got a call out in the countryside. Older widow, faulty grounding in the back rooms of her house. Simple job. She made coffee while I worked, humming softly in the kitchen. After I finished, I stood on her porch checking the voltage drop when she handed me a mug and said quietly, you look like someone who's been through a war, but still remembered to bring flowers. I didn't know what to say at first, so I just smiled and replied, I try to leave things better than I found them. She nodded, like she understood something I hadn't said. That night, I didn't dream about Hannah. For the first time in a long time, I dreamed about something else. Not a person, just a feeling. Possibility. Like the first breeze after winter. It started showing up in small ways. A waitress smiled at me longer than usual. No rush, no expectations. Just a flicker of recognition. One day, I finished a job and found a note tucked under my clipboard. Thank you for your help. If you ever want to grab coffee, here's my number. I didn't rush anything. I didn't jump. I just let time do what it's supposed to. Move forward. And somewhere on the other side of town, Hannah heard a whisper, a mention in passing. Lucas was dating someone. I didn't see her reaction, but I heard about it later. From someone mutual, distant enough not to be caught in the middle. Apparently, her hands trembled as she read the message in the group chat. An old college friend had run into me at the farmer's market. I remember the day. It was sunny, crisp, the kind of morning that smelled like hope and apples. I was with Naomi. We were picking out peaches. She had laughed at something I said and leaned into me slightly, like it was second nature. Like I mattered. That friend must have mentioned it in the chat. Saw Lucas today, looked good. He was with someone. She looked at him like he was the only man on earth. Hannah read that and shut off her phone. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment she started drafting another email. Subject, I'm sorry. I imagine she wrote version after version, deleting, rewriting. Too long. Too short. Too empty. Too late. I imagined the cursor blinking back at her like a ticking clock she couldn't silence. In the end, she didn't send anything. Just slipped back into silence again. Justin? He'd vanished. Packed her things into a duffel bag and dropped them on the curb. That's all he left her. No speech. No closure. Just luggage and a locked door. Ironic. The man who once told her she was the fire he needed had moved on like she was a page he regretted ever reading. And I think that's when it hit her. What cheating really does. It doesn't just destroy the trust people had in you. It digs into your own chest and poisons the part of you that believed you were good. It erodes your sense of self, grain by grain. Wife, mistress, victim, villain. Truth is, she was all of them. And none of them. But me? I was sitting in a small jazz bar in Richmond, fingers wrapped around a glass of bourbon. Across from me sat Naomi. She wasn't loud. Not flashy. Not the kind of woman who demanded a room's attention. She didn't have to. She had steady eyes. A quiet laugh. Presence. She listened. I told her, I used to think love meant fixing what breaks. She looked at me, really looked, and said, sometimes it does, but sometimes love means knowing when not to bleed for someone who won't stop cutting. I nodded. Let it sink in. We talked through dinner. Through coffee. Through the last song the saxophonist played before they started stacking chairs. It was easy. No pressure. No ghosts. Just now. And Hannah? She started sleeping with the lights on. Not because of fear. Because of emptiness. Because silence was louder now. And her cousin had gone away for work, leaving her alone with the echoes. She passed by the mirror in the hallway and didn't recognize herself. I wasn't there to see it. But I can imagine it. Her reflection staring back hollow and strange. Dull eyes. Slumped shoulders. The sharpness she once wore like armor replaced with something heavier, something broken. Guilt catches up to everyone eventually. You can outrun it for a while. Laugh over wine. Bury it in distractions. But it waits. Patient. And when it finds you, it doesn't shout. It whispers. Constantly. Until it sounds like your own voice. Weeks later, I saw her again. By accident. Naomi and I had just left the bookstore on Carey Street. She'd found some old poetry collection and insisted it was fate. I teased her about her obsession with secondhand books, and she called me a snob for buying a new hardcover. We were laughing, her hand in mine, when we stepped into the sunlight. I didn't see Hannah, but I found out later that she saw us. And in that frozen moment, I guess she saw something in me she hadn't expected. Peace. Not revenge. Not smug satisfaction. Just peace. And I suppose that's what hurt her most. Because it meant I hadn't just survived her, I'd moved past her. Funny how life keeps moving, even when you think it shouldn't. But that's the thing about storms, they don't last. And once they're gone, the air is clear. Clean. I wasn't rebuilding with rage. I wasn't sculpting my healing into a statement. I was just living. Naomi and I took little trips. Blue Ridge, Asheville, Smith Mountain Lake. Nothing fancy. We'd stop at roadside diners and antique shops. She had a habit of picking up odd little trinkets and pretending she absolutely needed them. One Saturday, she dragged me into this old shop that smelled like cedar and dust. Don't roll your eyes, she warned, wagging her finger at me. There might be treasure here. You said that last time, I said, smirking, and we walked out with a dented spoon and a haunted-looking lamp. It was vintage, she corrected, already halfway down the next aisle. She made me try vegan tacos later that afternoon. I played along. I always do. But when a kale leaf caught in my throat and I started choking dramatically, she burst out laughing. Really laughing. The kind you don't plan, that comes from somewhere deep. She laughed so hard she snorted. That laugh, it filled places in me that had been hollowed out long ago. Naomi didn't know she was doing it. That's what made it work. She wasn't trying to fix me or make me forget. She was just being herself. Real. Present. But I hadn't forgotten the past. Some nights, it would still float back to the surface, quietly, like steam off coffee. I didn't run from it, didn't fight it. It was part of me now, just not all of me. One night, we sat on a park bench overlooking the James River. The city behind us flickered, tiny yellow lights blinking like distant signals from a calmer world. Naomi leaned into me slightly, her shoulder brushing mine. Then she asked, softly, "Do you still think about her?" I didn't pretend. I didn't dress it up. "Sometimes," I said, but not with anger. More like a scar I stopped picking. She nodded slowly. "We all have one." That was it. No lecture. No jealousy. No loaded silence. Just understanding. That was the moment I knew she was different. No games. No manipulation. No walking on eggshells or decoding what every glance meant. I exhaled. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was being tested. Meanwhile, back across town, Hannah was staring at her old wedding ring. I didn't know it, but I can guess what it meant for her. Why she hadn't thrown it out or sold it. Guilt has a way of disguising itself as sentiment. Maybe she kept it to remember what she once had. Maybe to punish herself. I heard later, through someone at the hospital, that she wrote a letter. A real one. Pen and paper. I never got it. She never sent it. But I imagine what it said. Something about the truth. About betrayal. About seeing too late what she never understood in time. But I didn't need the letter. I didn't need the apology. Closure isn't a door someone else closes for you. It's the one you shut gently and walk away from, without needing to hear a click behind you. Weeks passed. Then a month. She tried dating again, I heard. A real estate agent. A bartender. A divorced dad. None of them stuck. Because she wasn't just looking for a man. She was looking for something she'd already had, and broken. I don't think it was the loneliness that punished her most. It was the realization that the one thing in her life that had actually been real was me. I never gloated. Never felt the need to. People kept expecting some big moment. Me getting angry, firing back, making her feel what I'd felt. But I didn't have it in me. And that's what made it worse for her, I think. She could have lived with rage. She could have absorbed bitterness. Those would have kept her part of the story. But I gave her silence. And silence is final. By the time autumn settled into Richmond, I could feel it in my bones. Not the cold, something else. Peace. The world exhaled with the changing leaves. The trees bled gold and copper. The sidewalks filled with people holding warm cups in mittened hands. Life was moving forward, quietly, but with certainty. I was working a job over in Churchill, wiring outdoor lights on a new townhouse. Up on a ladder, clear blue sky above me, crisp air cutting through my jacket. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I didn't reach for it. I wasn't in a hurry to let anything in. It wasn't until lunch that I checked. One voicemail. From her. I hesitated. I could have skipped it, deleted it unheard. But I didn't. I sat in the truck with my sandwich still wrapped in my lap, pressed play, and listened. Her voice cracked halfway through. She didn't ask for forgiveness. Didn't beg. There were no promises or manipulations. Just her voice, raw, quiet. I wanted you to know I'm sorry. Not for what I lost, though that's endless. But for how I made you doubt yourself. You didn't deserve that. You were good to me. Better than I ever understood. I don't expect a reply. I just needed you to know. I finally see it. All of it. I stared out across the horizon for a long time after that. The city looked calm from the hill. Just rooftops, smoke curling from chimneys, and the rustle of leaves in the wind. I didn't cry. I didn't call back. I deleted the voicemail, not out of cruelty, but because I didn't need it anymore. I wasn't collecting ghosts. Not anymore. That night, I met Naomi at a little rooftop restaurant just west of Broad Street. The lights of the city shimmered below us like a promise. We sipped red wine and laughed about nothing. I don't even remember the joke. It didn't matter. Her laugh was enough. When she leaned her head against my shoulder, I didn't flinch. I breathed her in, lavender, and something warm I still don't have a name for. I smiled. I was free. I didn't know it then, but miles away, Hannah had moved out of the duplex. She was living in a small one-bedroom near the hospital now. Minimal. Quiet. Enough. She filled the silence with jazz records. Cinnamon candles. Succulents in the window. She didn't date. Didn't chase. She just existed. I heard later that she stopped checking my social media. That she stopped replaying our last conversation. That one night, she took the wedding ring. Ours. And walked to the river. Dropped it. Let it sink. Just like all the things she once took for granted. It didn't feel like a dramatic gesture. It felt like permission. That's what I thought when I heard what Hannah had done. Dropped the ring into the river. No announcement. No theatrics. Just let it go. I didn't feel anything sharp when I heard. No sting. No victory. Just the quiet confirmation that we were long past endings. that whatever still lingered between us had finally settled into silence. Months passed, and the seasons softened around me. Early spring crept in slowly, dogwoods blooming, mornings warming. Naomi moved in. She didn't take over the space. She didn't rearrange my life or repaint the walls like she was trying to erase something. She just blended. She brought sunlight into rooms that had long forgotten what warmth felt like. She brought her calm into my home the way light creeps in beneath a door, gently, without permission, but needed all the same. We made a mess of things, beautifully. Sunday mornings with coffee and paperbacks, feet tangled in blankets, dogs barking somewhere down the street. Friday nights with recipes neither of us understood, kitchen timers beeping, smoke alarms chirping, our laughter echoing louder than anything else. "I think we just burned saffron," she said once, coughing through a cloud of something that had once been a risotto. "That's probably illegal in 3 countries. I laughed, fanning the smoke. But the food didn't matter. The laughter did. Meanwhile, I heard Hannah was quiet, walking more, journaling, calling home again. One afternoon, she passed our old house, the one we shared. The door was navy blue now. Someone had added a bench to the porch. She didn't cry, didn't get angry. She just stood there, nodded, and moved on. I didn't need to know that to understand she was finally letting go. Some chapters don't need final sentences. Some lessons don't arrive until long after the damage is done. I think she finally saw it, the truth that used to choke me in silence. That she never really knew how to love me. Not because I wasn't worth it, but because she hadn't learned to love herself yet. You can't give what you don't have. I'd spent years trying to be enough for someone who didn't even know what enough meant. But that wasn't my fault. And it wasn't hers, not entirely. Now she wasn't waiting to be rescued anymore. She was learning to rescue herself. And me? I lived. Without spite. Without regret. No posts. No declarations. No performance. Because true revenge, the kind that doesn't taste bitter, is becoming everything the person who hurt you never imagined you could be. And I didn't need to flaunt it. I just lived well. And in that quiet, steady victory, I found something I never thought I'd feel again. Peace. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.